It's hard to find these.
No, I get that.
And most of them are just so positive that, it's like finding a bad one's just like a needle in a haystack,
Comments about your videos, yes, is what you're talking about right now. No, I get that. Yeah.
No.
Well, you reap what you sow.
I got a comment the other day. I posted a joke, and someone just posted, "That is a joke on The Simpsons."
Oh,
as in like I've heard that.
Yeah.
Joke.
And I thought, well, I didn't obviously steal a joke from The Simpsons, but it's not uncommon for people to come up with the same joke.
right. Exactly.
So I wonder if it was on The Simpsons. I'm trying to go through like 30 seasons of episodes to find it. It would be impossible though.
You can ask ChatGPT.
I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but it was basically just saying
just for clarity, you were saying you got a mean comment on one of your videos.
I did. I got a mean comment yesterday, and it was a gentleman who took the time to say, oh gosh, he used big words, so it was like he thought it through. But it was basically saying it was not funny and mildly annoying. Sorry, Chris. Sorry, he apologized. It's like, sorry, Chris.
I'm really sorry for you.
Sorry, but I've got to be honest with you.
I'm sorry about this, but that was
what character was it?
It was Steven. Yeah, Steven's character.
Yeah,
I like it when people say things aren't funny. I think that's what he was basically saying. Like, this is not funny. Essentially, is what he was saying. But I always just think there's so many other people that think it is funny. Who are you to say that it's not funny?
Yeah.
Like, it may not be funny to you, or you could say, I didn't find this funny. That's totally fine. But to just make like a blanket statement saying this is not funny, it's like, well,
are you saying you don't believe in truth, Chris?
Saying we all have our
feels
own
like a lot of
truth.
it feels like a lot of excuses.
I'm saying,
I think what if you just
no one can just unequivocally say,
yeah,
this is not funny.
Yeah, I heard Seinfeld say one time, like somebody said, greatest comedian in the world, Jerry Seinfeld, and he's like, that's not true. That's impossible. No one's the greatest. There's too many people that like different things. So yeah. And I love Jerry Seinfeld, but he's not my favorite comedian. So
sure,
yeah,
that doesn't mean he's not the best.
I mean,
he's not your favorite, Adam.
But that's good.
You just
okay,
whatever
right,
metric
go by who is the wealthiest comedian in the world?
Yeah, you could probably
Jerry
say
Seinfeld.
Who's the most successful, who's the most financially successful, maybe.
Sorry.
Oh, you okay? Okay, Chris took a drink of water.
Sorry, just trying to make it dramatic.
This really got him worked up.
Man, oh, what an actor. If you're watching this, if you're not watching this,
okay.
I've never seen someone be so dramatic about getting a little bit of water down the wrong pipe.
You need to take a 5-minute break.
That happened to me on the flight the other day. Adam, do you remember this? When my head went back, or I was like sitting back, and I got like some spit that went down the wrong pipe, and I just immediately started going. And it's like this quiet plane.
Yeah.
And a flight, I'm just like, I was like, I didn't want to do the whole like gasping thing. So I'm trying to just like suppress the cough, and it's just making it worse. Yeah. And I'm just, people think I'm having like a seizure or something. And then I just have to start coughing. I couldn't keep it in. And so then I'm like, that whole thing. And I'm sure everybody on there thought
that happened like in the middle of a take when you're just going to ruin it for everybody. It happens to me all the time. Yeah. I feel like, just like, I'd walk out, but I can't leave right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What I was saying is a plane is just a terrible place to be coughing, period, because it already feels like a big COVID tube. And then when one person starts coughing, it's just like, no, we're all going to get sick.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Hey, speaking of this, I thought when we were filming with Chris a few weeks ago, this scene that part of the joke was that the mic was really close to him and it was causing a shadow to be go across his face, and he kept looking off at the boom operator. I couldn't make it through the take.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was really funny. I kind of want to pull it up and show it.
Yeah, show it. Do you have
I
it?
wonder if this will work. I'm working on it this morning.
Okay.
So I went through.
So you guys were Gary. You guys were shooting a video for Summit.
Shooting a video for Summit. It's like a training video.
So Summit's a company that does AVL for churches, and Gary does all their video production.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
Yeah, and the concept was we were going to do an instructional video that you would have seen in like the 90s. And it is real information, but then we just put a twist on it where it's like really bad production and just kind of like what you've seen. If you've ever seen like those old 90s instructional videos or whatever, it's like always bad production and bad music.
Oh, man.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
It's coming up. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh man, if you're not watching this, you're already missing out because this picture of Chris looks incredible.
Let's see. Hopefully you guys can hear.
Any owner-furnished IT and AVL equipment listed in Exhibit A must be ready and functional by the time our install technicians arrive on the job site. Any AVL equipment that is changing venues needs to be pulled out of the current system and moved to the new one.
Where did you guys film this? You're like on a church stage or something?
Yeah, it was a Life Church.
We filmed it in Catoosa.
Oh, okay.
The Life Church in Catoosa. They were kind enough to let us in there. So
oh, that's awesome.
That made my son Jake was doing he was operating the boom, and it was funny watching him because he couldn't take it.
Oh man, that's awesome.
But he's been talking about that. He's like, when you start editing, you've got to show me that.
That's awesome. That's fun.
You mentioned in one of the other podcasts that you had your boys who are teenagers working on set with you. I'm taking my daughter on the road for the first time for a show this weekend.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
So Luna is 4, but I've got a gig in Kansas. It's like 4 hours away, and it's on a Sunday morning. So because we've got Ira, our newborn, who's only 2 weeks old, and I'm doing the show. I was like, just to make it easier for Diana, I was like, why don't I just take Luna with me? Like, it's a church, so it's easy. Like, Lou and I'll stay in a hotel that night, and then the next morning they know she's coming, so they've got like, they have nursery and they've got a little friend that she can play with. And Lou's awesome. I mean, she's pretty obedient. So, yeah, it's kind of been a dream of mine that when I hit the road, that the fam can come with me. So
yeah, that's awesome.
The first time. So, and we got her a suitcase. She's super excited. We told her she's going to go on a work trip with Dad.
Oh my God.
Did you get her a little
That's
suit?
so good. A little business suit.
Yeah. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
That's cool.
All right. We got a good episode today. We are answering a listener's email today, which is all about the storytelling process. And so we're going to be talking about storytelling, joke writing in regards to storytelling, story structure, that sort of thing. And here we go.
Go.
I'm sorry I missed my cue for
what were we supposed to do?
Something like... I mean, it sounds pretty cool.
That music sucks. Okay, welcome to the podcast, Risk It for the Biscuit. Listen, if you don't know what this podcast is, then and why did you start with this episode? But I'm not going to spend the time talking about. Basically, it follows Chris and our journey into comedy and doing it alongside our best pal, Gary. And our podcast is sponsored in part by Northern Creative, which is Gary's video production company. You can check them out at northern.work, as well as the Looney Bin Comedy Club in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Check out their headliner lineup at tulsa.looneybincomedy.com. We'll talk more about them later. And you guys ready to answer our first?
Would love to.
It's not our first email, but it is our first question. All right. This comes from our good pal, Joy Abad. Hello, Joy.
What's up, Joy?
Yeah. Joy said this. I'd love to hear an episode about what you've learned about the art of storytelling. For me as a writer, it's a bit more applicable, and I know with all your work with Pixar people, you've probably got some killer tips, and maybe as a storyteller, how do you find the punchline? In other words, how can I find more humor to add into my own writing?
Well, thank you, Joy.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
A big question.
She said that may be 3 different subjects.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear an episode about what you've learned about the art of storytelling. Why don't we just take that one?
Okay.
To give people a little bit of context, Gary, Chris, and I all worked at the same church for a very long time, Church on the Move in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a big part of our job was writing and telling stories, other people's stories, on video. And so fairly early on, we had to learn, we were just like, is there some sort of structure to the storytelling? Is it, you know, do you just get in there and interview people and just see where it takes you? Or is there some sort of like guideline that we're supposed to follow? And a real light bulb moment came for us and has, I think, impacted all of our careers and lives in a really significant way is when we learned the story spine and story structure that we're able to use like all the time for everything. And it's the story structure that is used in what is called classical storytelling, which is like predominantly the main style of narrative storytelling that
like 95% of stories are told this way.
Every Marvel, Disney, Pixar film is going to be told this way. There's like a few weird movies that don't follow this structure. I think like Life of Pi is kind of like avant-garde films don't really follow.
Yeah, like
art house
Memento or something that's like going back and forth and back and forth.
Without getting too in the weeds, because it can be kind of hard to follow if you're just listening to this. We're talking about a storytelling structure that is, in its simplest form, a beginning, a middle, and an end, which seems like really elementary, but is just, you know, kind of basic storytelling facts. And within each of those parts is kind of like you can break it down even more or break it out even more.
I feel like we were doing this, we just didn't have words for it. Like we kind of telling people stories, you'd learn kind of how it all flowed, but we never really were able to find words to it until we went to this workshop with Matthew Lund, and it was, very eye-opening. So the first kind of the beginning, middle, and end, kind of the first thing you start with is called the exposition, which is where you're just kind of learning about who this person is and what kind of their normal life is like and what they dream about or what they want or what they're after. And then
like even who they are, like what character are we even talking about?
Yeah. Exhibition is where you're just kind of meeting who this person is and kind of what their world is like. And then the inciting incident is kind of what turns that whole world upside down, and changes this person forever. And then after that,
and that's where the tension comes.
Yeah. That's where everything
needed
shifts. And then that character is then trying to regain some sense of normalcy or get back to where they were before the inciting incident. You know, if it's like their kid gets kidnapped or something, then the movie is them trying to get their kid back. So the kidnapping would be the inciting incident. But like what we would talk about a lot of was people, maybe having like addiction issues or things like that. And it's just like, well, you can trace it back to like, a trauma. A mom died, and just to deal with that pain, you enter into the story. That's the part of the story called the progressive complications, which is where you're progressively trying to fix the problem, and and you're just making it worse. Typically, it's progressively getting worse and worse and worse, which is raising the stakes, I think, or at least raising the tension.
Yeah.
And then you get to the crisis climax. This is basically where finally, like the final straw. If it's like the showdown. If you're continuing with the metaphor of if it's about a kid being kidnapped, then it's like this is like the showdown with the person and the kidnapper. It's like we're about to get the kid back, and there's some big standoff or whatever. It's like the highest crisis level, or the craziest part of the story. And then after that, then you go into would be the resolution, and that's where the tension is released and the story is brought to a resolution. And then you have the moral of the story after that. So the resolution and moral are usually pretty short in comparison. Progressive complications is usually the longest part of the story.
That is like that story spine is the probably has been the most significant tool that we've been given as storytellers and writers in comics ever. I would say I use it.
Oh yeah,
I use it almost every single day.
Yeah, it's a recipe for success.
Yeah. If I'm working on a story that isn't working, because it's not like if I was just writing a story out or whatever, and if I feel like it's not working, a lot of times I can break out each part into that story structure and realize I'm missing a part.
Right.
That I'm not doing one part due diligence. A couple of things that I learned early on was, one, and these were all from our pal Matthew Lund, who used to work at Pixar and is a director now. He said the reason a lot of movies are boring is because the progressive complication isn't getting progressively complicated. It's just things are happening, but they're not raising the stakes. So that's one thing that makes a story or a movie boring. Another one is that in the exposition, you don't find anything that the audience really cares about. So I think a really good example is just the character of Superman. It can be really hard to care about what he wants because he can kind of have anything and he's pretty indestructible. I mean, even in like the DCU, he dies and he comes back. And so it's like, there's not, like with Marvel, which I don't know if you followed this, Chris, but like Iron Man died. He's not coming back. Like he's gone. So it can be hard to buy. You're not going to buy into a story. You're not going to buy it. Did you just kiss this guy?
For Iron Man.
Yeah, it's hard to be interested in a story if you don't care. And Andrew Stanton, the guy who directed WALL-E, has this great TED Talk online that he just says the number one rule of storytelling is make me care. And the way that you make someone care is by allowing them to connect with what the hero or the protagonist in your story wants.
I mean, I think the basic, if you can just boil it down, of like you need some tension, like you need something at stake in a story, and then you need the character to change. Like if there's no change in the character, it's kind of like, well, why did we? Yeah. Why did we watch that? And when they're the same person, because
that was always a really good litmus test for figuring out if we had a story. Is there a story here? I mean, this event happened that was kind of interesting, but like, is there a story? Well, it's just like, did the person change? Are they different than they used to be? Well, now if they are, and you're like, okay, there's a story there. We just have to uncover it and figure out what happened that changed them and how that all worked.
Another tip is, I don't know who, Adam, you probably know who said this. I feel like it was Pete Docter. Maybe he said, like, don't give people 2 + 2, give them 1 + 1 + 1 + 1.
I don't remember this. No, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe
so basically slowly dole out information.
Oh yeah.
Ask questions and answer them. Don't just throw everything at people at once. And that's part of the progressive complications too. But, like, take your time with stuff rather than just, because if you ask, if you just answer everything all at once, you're done. That's over. Like, one of the movies that kind of breaks this rule of the resolution, not only usually it's like a 7 minutes like left in the movie when things get resolved, but like The Chef with John Favreau.
Oh yeah, great movie.
What do you say his name?
We watched that movie in Hawaii. That's just a little braggy statement. Just that.
It's like the last 45 minutes is the resolution in that movie, but you still cared about what they were doing, so it worked. For me, it did.
A good example of why once the resolution hits, it's kind of over. I saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3 yesterday, but I could only fit it into a certain amount of time, and the previews were too long, so I had to leave early to go pick up Luna from school. And I made it to the resolution, and there was more movie left, and I was like, "It's fine. I'm done. I don't need to see the rest of this because I know how it ended." Gary, you were saying change, and that's a really big part of storytelling. It's hard to really have a complete story if the protagonist doesn't change and learn something. And we have learned that there really is only two kinds of change. You either learn to have courage to do something, or you learn to care about something or someone, or both. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find any story or film that has a change that's different than that. I haven't found it yet. And I mean, I didn't come up with this, but it seems to be solid.
Yeah, that's a Pixar thing, isn't it?
Well, it's because it takes
that rule is a Pixar thing, isn't it? That you learn courage.
I learned it from Pixar guys, but I don't know if
I
don't know that they came up with it, but yeah. So I think this is really interesting, and we can probably, Joy in her email had several parts there, so we could definitely break this up because we're running out of time. But I think, you might be listening to this and be like, you guys are comics or writers, like this isn't very funny. Something Nate Bargatze says, the comedian, is if you're not saying something funny on stage as a comedian, say something interesting. So I think that regularly, my experience with watching comics, newer or local comics, the problem with bits that they do that are story driven typically have to do with how interesting the story is or the structure of the story. And so often whenever I'm writing a new bit, I'll just write the story out first. And I heard Bert Kreischer talk about this on Mike Birbiglia's podcast recently, that he will just tell, if he has a new story, he'll just tell the story on stage. And hopefully he can find some jokes in it as he moves forward. I think the majority of his writing he does on stage. But this is like it seems like, well, it's not, just telling a story is like not that funny, but it is a crucial part of being able to turn a story into a bit. I mean, would you feel that way, Chris?
Yeah. I mean, I do think editing is a huge part of being a good storyteller, because I struggle with this a lot. If I'm just off the cuff telling a story, you guys, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, this is true, that I tend to just talk too much, or I say too many details or whatever. So I have to really work to go, what needs to be said and what can I get rid of? How do I tighten this up and make it not lose any of the information, but just use less words? Economy of words, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And for us, like when storytelling and all this kinds of having like a structure like this, it just really helps you to be able to get down to what actually just needs to be said and not go on rabbit trails and all this. One other kind of rule we always followed was balancing facts and feelings.
Yeah.
I always said that facts make it interesting, but feelings connect your audience, like make you care.
give it.
Do you feel like that rule kind of would apply to stand-up or comedy?
Oh, definitely. In fact, I think I have found that a lot of times the jokes will come from the way that I feel in that situation, more so than the facts. I can't think of an example
facts
right
aren't funny, but it's interesting. It's
almost like the facts
setup.
are the setup.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, you do get funny facts. Like I've been working on this bit about I saw this guy raking rocks. Like he was just like, it was his job to rake rocks, and I think that is a funny job. And so that's like a factual thing that's funny.
But it's a hard job. That's what it is. Say? It's a difficult job.
He was like sitting down doing it with his hand, and I was just like, but then like as I watched them because I was at a stoplight, I realized, I was like, wait a second, he's using another rock to rake those rocks. And I was like, oh, I don't think that's his job. I think he's homeless.
See, he was just playing.
So I think he's just playing around with these rocks. So then I felt silly. But then like as I kept going, I realized like he was actually doing a really good job. And so I was like, maybe this is his job.
Was he one of those like what are those little rock gardens? Was he, making it zen or doing something like that?
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. So, but all that to say, like, I do think that you can find humor in the facts. I have that whole story about Batman, how my grandma was watching the movie Batman, and I said, "You're watching Batman," and she was like, "No, this is a movie about a detective guy." That's a funny fact. Like she didn't realize she was watching The Dark Knight. But I do think I find the humor coming out of like the way that I feel about a situation.
Yeah, I think the facts and feelings helps. I think it helps especially if you're wanting it for something to feel more heartfelt. I think divulging how something made you feel is more, I don't know, it's more like a heart connection with the audience to make you be more endear yourself to the audience, I think. They can relate to how you feel. Maybe they don't relate to the exact fact of the thing, but they can relate to how that made you feel. So I feel like you're right, Gary, in the sense like the feeling is what people connect to if they can't the facts.
Totally. Sorry, I was interrupting you, Chris. I didn't want to forget this though. In stand up, one of the biggest rules is get the audience to like you. And often that comes through them just like rooting for you. And like, it's why I start so many sets by saying I'm cancer survivor. Cause it's hard not to like a guy who beat cancer. So, yeah. And also what you're talking about, Gary, we learned that from Ira Glass, the host of This American Life. And he just this week did a new episode on Mike Birbiglia's podcast, Working It Out. And he talked about that again. So if you really want to learn even more about this, then you can check out his podcast. I thought of another example. I have this joke about how I learned a little potty training tip for kids is I read, place a full-length mirror in front of your child's toilet, and when they see the reflection of themselves going to the bathroom, it'll give them confidence in themselves. And then I one morning got up, went to the bathroom, and I was sitting on the toilet, and that mirror was still there. And so I just got this like terrible reflection of what I looked like taking a poop.
Did the opposite.
And and then that was it. Like the feeling I had was like, oh, this isn't, I look terrible. This does not look good. And this does not make me feel good about myself. So I think that's probably a good example. And that's got both like the factual thing that happened is pretty funny that you would see a reflection of yourself taking a poop, but then also like, how does that make me feel? Well, it's not a great way to start the day. So
yeah.
So that's nice. That's a nice little tie-in. Probably good.
Or what is it? If it is a great way to start the day, what does that say about you?
I mean, yeah. I know, yeah. Look at me. I am.
God, look how good I look taking a dump.
I look good even taking a dump.
Look how good I look. Good. My pants around my ankles. This is great.
I always think that is the most vulnerable position to be in.
No,
that's why I hate going to the bathroom in the woods. I hate it. That's one of the things I hate the most about.
A lot to you?
Well, I go on these mountain trips and go backpacking up and climb a 14er every year, and it's very uncomfortable. Yeah. And the biggest, the one thing I hate the most is dealing with that at some point on the trip. I'm going to have to take a dump in the woods.
I always have flashbacks of Jurassic Park when the guy's in the bathroom sitting on the toilet, and all the walls fall down, and then he just gets scooped right out.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you noticed, but for the listeners, I want Chris and Gary and I to go on a retreat with a couple of our other buddies. And when I hate camping, you guys know that. And when I texted you guys, what do you think about going on a 3-night retreat? I don't know if you noticed how quickly I said, not camping. I'm not interested in going camping, because I just fully expected Gary to be like, oh, we can take my camper.
Yeah.
Just that's not what I'm looking for here.
That's not.
You've never even been in a camper.
It's true.
It's totally different than a tent.
I'm sure you're right.
Yeah.
There's a bathroom and a shower.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Beds.
I think it's the sleeping in the same one room with 5 other guys that everybody's going to be snoring. I'm not into that.
Oh man, the AC is so loud. Can't even hear.
That's fair.
It's great. We're leaving today to go camping.
Oh, that's right. Where are you going today?
We're going to Robbers Cave.
Oh, that's not in Arkansas, right? I've been there. I have been there with you.
No, it's in Wilburton, Oklahoma.
Maybe I haven't been there. Have I been there with you?
I thought Robbers Cave was in Arkansas.
Devil's
Den.
Sure? Devil's Den. That's where we went. We went to
that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, I think we're probably going to get more parts out of this episode, or out of this, not out of this episode, out of this theme. And so we'll cap it there. Hey, big shout out to our sponsor, Looney Bin Comedy Club in Tulsa. Thanks for sponsoring our podcast. Hey, if you want to go see awesome comedy in Tulsa, Oklahoma at a premier comedy club, then check out tulsa.looneybincomedy.com, and you can check out the headliners that they've got coming up in 2023. And if you go, there's a very good chance I will be at one of those shows. In fact, it's not totally set in stone yet, but very close. Chris and I are going to be doing a special show there this fall. We're looking at September, and so we'll keep you updated. It's almost completely in the bag, so that's going to be really fun. If you would like to follow, if you want to help the podcast, please share it with a friend. You can, of course, like and subscribe online, but sharing it with a friend is the best thing that you could do for our little podcast. If you would like to follow any of us, our comedy or our work, you can follow me on all the socials at heyadambush. Chris is at Chris Much Comedy, and you can follow Gary at Northern Creative on Instagram for your video production needs. And check out. Last but not least, I'm opening for Dustin Nickerson on August 26th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's a big show that I'm very excited about. My pals will be in attendance, and so you can check out those tickets at dustinnickerson.com and come see us. Clean show. It's going to be great. And I think that's what I got.
I think that's it.
That's what I got. All right.
That's awesome.
How about we always ask Chris to end the episode, but how about Gary ends the episode?
Woo. No one's listening at this point, so no pressure.
See ya.
That's it.
Next.
On to the next.
How about could you give us a sound effect?
A what?
A sound effect.
See ya.
See you later.
I had snot come out of my nose.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's great. Oh, all
right. Okay. I'm going to cancel stop recording.
Okay. Bye.